Hello everyone, I'm Forrest McFreelova and this is Speedplay Papal Italy number 17. We left off with our war essentially done. Our armies are roving through the northeast and American Middle West. Our forces in Africa were going to get onto the border with Egypt as we're about 180 days away from our war justification being ready. I don't think there are very many American army groups left whatsoever. There's about 14 regiments. We have a 90% war score peace deal that we could maybe get to 100% by adding one Canadian territory, although that would be 14%, so we'll just not do that. We could make it into more of a disaster, but I'd rather just leave it alone and not waste the jingoism, not that we're going to use it on anything else. So we do carry our armies forward, just occupying more of their territories, although realistically at this point my heart isn't really all that in the American campaign. They'll already accept peace with us, and while we do have the inertia of our armies just rolling across the countryside, the Mexicans are at war with them as well, so we may as well just let Mexico finish the job as well as just all of their own business. We really don't need to get involved anymore. We have managed to defeat the American industry pretty well. They don't actually appear to have very much industry over in their west coast. So what we'll probably start doing is shifting our forces back over to Europe, as it'll be rather inconvenient to ship them all out once we make peace. So we'll just stay in the war occupying the United States until we can get our armies out. Now we do move forward a few more provinces, but that's about it. Our war against Egypt is now justified. We'll go after their Sudan area, just because it's a big landlocked exclave, and it doesn't really make very much sense for them to have it. This war is probably going to be very, very short. I can't imagine it'll last more than a few months. We start justifying our war against the Ottoman Empire. We're going to liberate a country, just because it'll take the shortest amount of time of any of our war goals. And I realize, when I look at the amount of time it'll take, that the socialists are anti-military, and that means that it will take quite some time for us to get our war goal ready. We make peace with the Egyptians and move those armies on the border with the Ottomans, and when we move one or two regiments further, we're really just about ready to start evacuating from the American mainland back to our home country and also to Cuba, because we just have Cuba, so why not man it? We did manage to successfully conclude that war. There is still an American army sieging or occupying some of our territories, so we do go ahead and attack them to get rid of that. Once that's taken care of, we'll just leave those armies on our islands to prevent them being conquered by anyone else, and just start getting our forces all on their east coast. We do switch to a conservative party, our ideal conservative party, and you'll notice that our militancy is starting to get rather high. Well, we're really at that point in the game. We have one reform that we're left able to pass, and we have two options really. We can appoint a radical ruling party, and they will throw a coup taking over our government, at which point we would have to wait a little while before our people are just so upset that they would be willing to pass political reforms. We do go ahead and declare war on the Ottomans and just move our massive armies across the border. We also fabricate a claim on Hungary to just rebuild Romania because it looks disgusting. Anyway though, we could become radical and then wait until our people are so upset that they'll be willing to pass reforms, and then use those newly passable reforms to keep our people content, which means that there'd be about a 2 or 3 year period where we would have to face a lot of revolts, followed by a peaceful slide into democracy. I, for a lot of reasons, am not too enthused by that. I just realized, the main reason is if we become radical, for those 2 or 3 years we won't be able to hold elections. And then once we do become a democracy, we won't be able to appoint our ruling party anymore. So that's just a really non-ideal route we could go down, although we would probably be fascist for a little while, which could be fun. We are back to being socialist. We're just going to let that happen. The alternative is that we just do what we're doing now. We stay a monarchy that has elections constantly, and may occasionally get a ruling party we don't really like. Now, the risk with this is that once we're done passing all the reforms we're able to, which we'll probably do once we change our government back to conservative, once we pass that final reform, we will have to fight our people off for the rest of the game. Now, that isn't a very terrible piece of news, as our army is very clearly just large enough and powerful enough to overwhelm all of our neighbors and all of our adversaries. All we really have to worry about is keeping our borders clean and just beating up the Ottomans repeatedly. So, and here you see America is going through a bit of a revolution. We go ahead and piece them out, freeing a few states, New England, Texas, and California. Interestingly, they're all monarchies like us. So we could end up just facing prolonged domestic unrest until the end of the game. And what that would really entail is, and you'll notice there's a very large crisis that may break out into a world war, we would basically just have to keep fighting our own people. We do go ahead and pass the one reform we're able to, becoming conservative, to get our war goals added very quickly. We do make peace with Hungary. Romania is now back, not looking like a terrible mess. And hopefully we'll get some events adding jingoism so we can peace out the Ottomans and get ready for our last war. Also, America is probably going to become communist, so they might end up getting their industrial score back, at least to some great degree. We do get our jingoism, so we're able to add a couple new states to our war demands. We'll get Thrace for Constantinople, or Istanbul. Mexico makes a wide peace with America, being boring and lame. And we managed to get all of the Ottoman European holdings and free Cyprus. The reason we freed Cyprus and not, say, Iraq is because it was just much less war score required, and we'll just be able to go to war with Cyprus and annex them. We do go ahead and make some states out of Africa. They are very Italian now. And just to finish that thought, first of all, Italian culture is spreading very amazingly throughout. And to finish the other thought, we're just going to stay a monarchy with elections and deal with the possibly frequent rebellions that will ensure. Just because we'd probably have to face rebellions for a few years anyway, and this way we can at least semi-reliably get enough elections to constantly have jingoism to at least get a bit more from the Ottomans. At least enough to clean up our borders in the Middle East. As we can probably get one or two more wars in with the Ottomans, we finally managed to finish our infrastructure, and that's all going very, very nicely. I'm glad we managed to get conservatives in and socialists out, so we don't have to actually manually do all that. But for a lot of reasons, we're going to pick the lesser of two evils and just stay a monarchy. Here we're seeing the first of probably many major rebellions that are going to break out. We just assign all of our armies to automatically suppress rebels, and while it's probably going to be a long, sordid, and bloody affair, so long as our military doesn't rebel, and you'll notice there are symbols next to some of our troops, that does mean that they are ideologically motivated and may rebel against us. Really, we just have to keep our army the strongest in the world, by some significant margin. And I think we'll be able to pull that off and maintain the status quo. Worst case, we may just end up becoming fascist, although I don't want to do that before we finish annexing Egypt and hopefully get a little bit of land from the Ottoman Empire. And realistically, at least for our Ottoman wars, we are going to need to be able to hold constant elections. Once we have all the lands that we need, then we can start dithering into various ideologies. We're just not quite there yet. And these constant rebellions and the casualties that will ensue through them is just the price that we're going to have to pay for freedom of action. And that's really all there is to say about that. It's interesting that we didn't even have to switch our ruling parties in that last election. Interestingly enough, our people, despite being majority socialist, still voted in the conservative parties. We will hopefully get all of our infrastructure taken care of. It looks as though the attempted revolution didn't actually slow it down too much. And we add another state to civilization, as Italian culture spreads. We're also the second largest by population, second only to China, although that's not really going to change. Now, we're really nearing the end game of this campaign. I imagine the last few years are going to go rather quickly, just because the only wars I really expect we'll need to fight are against the Ottoman Empire and Egypt. Everything else is just going to be maintaining the borders we already have and just beating up the countries that really just anger the status quo or disrupt the status quo. So, with that all said and done, we're probably going to call it right about here. Just taking a quick look to admire the interesting cultural turnout. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. Here is the final end casualty notes for our war with America, and we'll be back tomorrow.